It's human nature to appreciate beauty. Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought, hey, I look pretty good? But then when you take a photo, it doesn't look as good. I bet many of you have had this experience. Welcome to the Dark Psychology World channel. If you're curious about what I look like, the only way to find out is by looking in the mirror. Otherwise, you're stuck with photos. But you've probably noticed that you look better in the mirror than in photos. In fact, you might feel like your photo doesn't really look like you. To be blunt, it might even look a bit ugly. You might have heard people say that the ugly version of you in the photo is the real you and that everything in the mirror is just a beautified illusion. But is that really true? Not necessarily. Today, let's talk about why you look different in the mirror compared to a photo and which one is your real face. Before we start, remember to click the like button below. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. To understand which version of you is the real one, you first need to understand why you look better in the mirror and worse in photos. The first reason is the repeated universal light effect. This is a psychological phenomenon where people develop a favorable impression of something simply because they are familiar with it. This effect is also known as the law of familiarity. For instance, the more a person appears in front of you, the easier it is for you to develop a liking for them. This is especially true for friends or your favorite YouTubers. When you first met them, you might have thought they looked average or ordinary. But over time, after interacting with them, you start to find them more attractive. So let's dive into this topic. Indeed, he's quite a good-looking guy. So when you look in the mirror, there's this repeating light effect. But isn't the photo also familiar to me? Why do I still feel ugly? Well, if you're standing in front of a mirror right now, you know that mirrors flip images left to right. And most people's faces aren't perfectly symmetrical. Even many attractive celebrities are like this. You, who are used to the mirror image, might feel a bit strange when you see your flipped image. Secondly, when you look in the mirror, your face is moving. It can't be completely still, right? But for photos, just press the shutter button and your appearance is frozen. This so-called moving face effect means that a dynamic face will look better than a static face. When people recognize faces, they're generally used to looking at dynamic faces. It's not hard to imagine, right? Ordinary people can't talk to you without moving, right? So looking at the dynamic face in the mirror will make it look more natural and familiar. On the contrary, the static face in the photo is not that familiar. The third point of concern is something famous American professor and psychologist Albert Marbin mentioned in a 1967 paper. There are 3 elements that affect our favorability: 7% of the wording content during conversation, 38% of vocal expressions, and 55% body language. That is to say, people's focus is not singular. You can watch this clip of a famous American internet entrepreneur. After watching the clip several times, have you noticed any moles or blemishes on his face? If you notice anything, leave a comment below. When ordinary people watch news, their attention will be distracted. The brain will automatically ignore some information that it deems unimportant. And when it's static, this information is clear at a glance. Of course, there's also another reason. When people look in the mirror, they often want to see the good-looking parts of themselves. They can move freely in front of the mirror and pose at any angle that looks good. And photos, well, they're a different story. There's no way to switch angles like you can in a mirror. The angle at which you press the shutter? That's how you appear to the world. Even so, the influence of this angle is something everyone should understand better than me, right? So I won't go into too much detail here. The reason why we look so good in mirrors is related to psychology. Does that mean the ugliness in the photo is more real? Not necessarily. Everyone should know that photography itself can also cause some factors that make people look less attractive. Camera shooting changes. First of all, the biggest difference between a camera and a mirror is that the mirror is a plane mirror. A camera is a combination of a convex mirror and a concave mirror. These curved mirrors will distort with shooting distance. Take a look at some reference pictures I found on the internet. At 24 millimeters, which is a wide-angle lens, the person in the photo is already distorted. Points are elongated, eyes are wider, and the nose and mouth are getting bigger. On the contrary, at 300 millimeters, the facial features become relatively smaller and the face is also bigger. Isn't it strange that these would look good? And as the pixels increase in photos, it will also make the small flaws on the face appear clearly. In addition, those with photography experience have also found that light and angle are also important, right? All these shooting variables will affect the authenticity of the photo. So sometimes when my friends say you made it look ugly, it's indeed possible. So which one is your true self? After all, the instability of photos, there are so many things compared to the mirror. Angle, light, distance, shooting techniques, and now there's even a beauty camera function. So I think the look in the mirror is still relatively close to the real thing, although it will be affected by some psychological suggestions. Certainly, you can also leave your comments below. Besides, if someone says your photo looks better than you do in person, then you have to see if you have retouched the pictures too much. Okay, if you think this episode is good, remember to click like below. If you also find this episode helpful to you, remember to share it with your family and friends. The last thing is of course the subscription and the little bell. All those fun and interesting little facts, I will notify you as soon as possible. This is Dark Psychology World Channel. See you next time.